Hello and welcome to Fitness Protocols with Brando. In this episode, we'll dive into what exactly carbohydrates are, why they should be managed, and methods to managing them. This is important to know due to the nature of how carbohydrates affect cells, all cells, meaning healthy and diseased. We'll dive deeper into how carbohydrates fuel cancer cells, lead to diabetes, and methods for preventing disease, and the extreme weight loss benefits later on in this episode with blood work results as validation. I've been in the field of health, fitness, and nutrition for over 15 years. My burning desire is to share knowledge, experience, and methods to live a sober, productive, and meaningful life via bodybuilding, powerlifting, and macronutrition enrichment. Carbohydrates, often referred to as carbs for short. For clarity purposes, when I say carbs, I'm referring to carbohydrates. Carbs are essential macronutrients along with proteins and fats that are required for the body to function optimally and maintain good health. Carbs is the primary source of energy that fuels all the cells in the body. Examples of carbs are vegetables, fruits, grains, and sugars. Once these foods make it to the digestion tract, the pancreas secretes the hormone insulin, which converts carbs into what is known as glucose, a usable form of energy by cell tissues. Carbs are stored in organ tissue first, managed by the liver. The liver is like the supervisor directing where the energy needs to go. And then muscle tissue, and any excess is then stored in fat cells. Not all carbohydrates are created equal. Therefore, they're placed in two different categories: complex carbs and simple carbs. Complex carbs possess a different molecule makeup that slows down the digestion process and therefore insulin response due to the added quality of vitamins, minerals, and fibers. Examples of these are avocado, whole grains, asparagus, and berries, versus, say, simple carbs such as sugars, which spikes insulin response immediately due to the missing elements of vitamins, minerals, and fibers that slow down digestion. Some examples are white bread, soda, candy, beer. Notice all of these are processed foods. When you consume complex carbs, it's like your body solving 3 algebra equations at once versus one. It takes more time to solve. Furthermore, certain candies, such as pixie sticks, contain dextrose, a form of sugar which is essentially a raw form of glucose, which provides instantaneous insulin dump response. No equation solving necessary. An overabundance of glucose in the bloodstream, meaning eating too many carbs too often, is called hyperglycemia, which is a precursor, beginning stages to diabetes. Diabetes occurs when the pancreas becomes overworked, overwhelmed, and inevitably shuts down. Organs are muscles, and like the muscles we tear down from resistance training, they can be overworked and reach failure too, except this muscle failure comes with great consequences, such as loss of limbs, eyesight, and life. Things we're trying to avoid. Another form of sugar, which you may already be familiar with, high fructose corn syrup, found in soda, sport drinks, and processed foods, which is extracted from corn, but not any old corn, genetically modified concentrated cornstarch. I must agree that soda does taste delicious. I do love it. You know what else loves it? Cancer cells. In fact, they thrive on high fructose corn syrup. Fun fact, the human body fights off cancer regularly. Our immune system is no slouch, working tirelessly to keep us alive. It's understood cancer acts like a fungus. Once it gains a stronghold, it spreads like spores throughout the body until it kills the host. However, cancer is unable to thrive and therefore spread without a source of fuel, meaning glucose. You may be wondering, how do I know this? Well, my father almost died from colon cancer while I was in high school. The very first step the staff took during his treatment was to put him on a low-carb, also known as a ketogenic diet. The goal is to starve the cancer, while chemotherapy, a derivative of mustard gas, is used to kill cancer. And healthy cells in its wake, of course. It's poison after all. And even though successful methods to treat cancer via sound treatment has emerged, chemotherapy remains a cash method. It's rather interesting. The audible spectrum, which is the range in which the human ear can hear, is 20 to 20,000 hertz. Turns out, at a range of 100,000 to 300,000 hertz, these are sound frequencies that are well beyond what the human can hear. These frequencies, or is better understood as intense vibrations, destroy cancer cells, while healthy cells are completely unaffected. Healthy cells simply, most through their day while cancer cells perish all around them. It's amazing, really. If you have found this information helpful thus far, please hit the like button. It goes a long way to help me reach others. As society and our culture evolve, many of us realize the importance of being proactive sans reactive. Not taking measures to protect ourselves from disease is like stumbling around in a pitch black room with no flashlight and the floor is covered in Legos. It's a trap. Okay, to be fair, it's a little worse than that. It is in our best interest to make small changes early in life to prevent disease like cancer and diabetes from developing instead of waiting until we're suffering and on the ropes for survival. Which brings us back to the ketogenic diet. This is your first line of defense against disease. Now, the ketogenic diet isn't new. It was the diet of our ancestors long before the term diet was coined, predating diet fads such as Atkins, Paleo, South Beach, and the carnivore diet. Just to name a few, there are many more. The ketogenic diet was the first developed / implemented in the early 1920s to cure epilepsy, which proved to be highly effective in reducing seizures. I theorize that epilepsy, among other health issues, is a side effect to increased carbohydrate consumption as a culture, but I have no direct proof of that. The ketogenic diet, also known as keto for short, is a high-fat, moderate protein, and low-carb diet. These are known as macronutrients. Note, there is a variance that exists between the parameters of low-carb diet and a ketogenic diet. For example, say between 100 to 200 carbs a day, that would be considered a low-carb diet, versus say 50 or less carbs a day, that would be considered a ketogenic diet. What's the difference, you ask? Remember, our body uses carbs as a primary source of fuel. If it doesn't have the required amount necessary, it will deviate and utilize its secondary source of fuel, fats. When the body uses fat as a source of fuel, this is known as ketosis. Now, I'm sure you recognize the benefits of the body using fats as a fuel over carbs. The body is in a position where it will more readily burn fat around the body, especially the waistline. This is how bodybuilders are able to gain and maintain muscle mass while getting next level shredded. Which makes sense if you consider that mankind has been hunters and gatherers for 300,000 years, while we've only been consuming bread in the last 5,000 years, a fraction of that time. Not enough time for the human body to adapt and evolve to that change without complications. Do you remember when our ancestors ran around with spears chasing wild loaves of bread? Neither do our ancestors. This message is brought to you by Quaker Oats. Just kidding. I'm sure Quaker Oats wouldn't approve of this message, but my content is truth motivated, not money motivated. You may be wondering, will the ketogenic diet work for me for weight loss and muscle gain? The short answer, absolutely. There are some important things to know before getting started. Carbohydrates also cause water retention, or better said, keeps the body well hydrated. On a ketogenic diet, the lack of carbs affects how the body maintains hydration. Due to this, there will be times you feel extremely thirsty, and excessive water consumption will flush the body of vitamins and minerals. This is why it's extremely important that we're combating this by consuming adequate amounts of minerals. That would be sodium, potassium, magnesium, while on a ketogenic or very low carb diet and only drinking water for thirst. We should be consuming the following minerals daily: sodium at 2,300 milligrams, potassium 3,500 milligrams, and magnesium 400 milligrams. They're extremely important for regulating blood pressure, our cardiovascular system, and heart health. Eating zero carbs makes me miserable, so I prefer to add in some low-carb friendly items such as all keto-friendly wraps to make the diet more manageable. Note that fiber content counteracts gross carbohydrate count. For example, low-carb wraps contain 16 gross carbs, 12 fiber. Subtract the 12 fiber from the 16 gross carbs, you have a net of 4 carbohydrates. It helps that these wraps also taste great too. My spouse and I began a ketogenic diet during COVID and continued for 3 years, leading into a decision to try keto. We found being a prisoner of our home had unexpected side effects: alcoholism, which led to depression, weight gain, disassociation, and aggressive disagreements, putting it lightly. We quickly discovered that lifestyle lacked the virtues that built our relationship prior: sober, productive, and meaningful. Knowing our current situation wasn't sustainable, we dove headfirst into keto. Be aware there's a couple ways to approach a ketogenic diet. One is known as dirty keto, which is where the main focus is managing the carbohydrates and proteins, but the fat sources are left relatively unchecked. Fatty meats such as hamburger, bacon, and sausage are regularly consumed, saturated fats being the primary source of fuel. We started with this version, allowing ourselves time to acclimate to the diet before making changes. The body needs time to adapt, and there is a period of flu-like symptoms for the first 3 weeks or so, known as keto flu. This is the body transitioning from carbs to fats as fuel. I found the symptoms mild at first and became more aggressive by week 3, a gnawing feeling of progressive fatigue and muscle weakness. However, by week 4, something magical happens, and you wake up feeling energized and clear-headed. I felt as though I spent my life unable to think with full clarity, and suddenly the fog was lifted. My spouse had a similar experience, minus the muscle weakness that I experienced leading into the transition. When the body begins using fats as fuel, the evidence can be found in your urine. These are acids used by the liver to break down fats. Ketone analysis strips can be used to validate that the body is in a state of ketosis and can be purchased almost anywhere. I'll leave a link in the description for reference. For transparency, there was one major noticeable side effect. A film began to develop on our teeth, and dental hygiene became a priority and concern. Over time, we opted to follow a more traditional keto diet by adding in foods that contain healthy fats, mono, unsaturated, and polyunsaturated, found in chicken, fish, avocado, nuts, and seeds. This greatly alleviated the dental issues. I was a year into the keto diet when I had my blood work done. Unfortunately, I didn't have the blood test taken prior as a point of reference, but as you can see in this photo here, I wasn't in the greatest of shape, and I certainly felt worse than I looked at the start. Now, let's dive into my blood work.
Both my LDL and HDL were elevated, but my overall cholesterol was in range. And I have 0 deficiencies due to supplementation.
A couple years into the keto diet, my irritable bowel disease began to flare up again. I began relying heavily on Pepogest, peppermint oil, soft gels, to combat the discomfort. Eventually, the discomfort became so intense, I was afraid to eat. That was when I decided to have an allergen test done. I had developed a severe sensitivity to eggs, which makes sense considering I'd been consuming anywhere from 6 to 12 eggs every morning for many years. Here's a look at my allergen test.
Things to avoid were eggs, black beans, pinto beans, and I had a serious yeast problem. Yellow represents the things I'm moderately allergic to, and red represents the things that I'm severely allergic to.
I removed eggs from my diet for about 1 year before I slowly added them back in every 4 days to maintain low sensitivity levels. Remember that time away from foods you are sensitive to drive down sensitivity levels. You don't have to go through life without, but be mindful. Lastly, we periodically consumed diet soda as a replacement for regular soda. There wasn't any noticeable or unwanted side effects to report. Studies suggest there are not entirely certain long-term side effects exist with the consumption of diet soda at duration, but I'm going with the assumption that diet soda is relatively safe until proven otherwise. The benefits did outweigh the struggle. Both my spouse and I lost between 30 and 40 pounds and managed to pack on some extra muscle. We found many ways to substitute, adjust, and compensate for the change with delicious recipes and diet hacks that I will share in future episodes. I strongly recommend the keto diet to anyone who is serious about gaining muscle, cutting fat, and improving their overall health. Thanks for watching. If you liked this episode, found it helpful or informative, please hit the like button. If you haven't already, it goes a long way to help me grow my channel. You may also find these episodes helpful: how to bench press 315 pounds in 90 days and critical arm workouts at home with dumbbells. Also, I'll leave a link to a free macro enrichment guide in the description of every episode for those interested. If you want to see more content like this, hit the subscribe button. I release new episodes as often as possible. Thanks again for watching, and let's grow a stronger mind, body, and spirit one day at a time. Until next time.